Welcome to Living Better Now. Jay Schadler is my guest today, a two-time Emmy Award-winning journalist, photographer, artist, and speaker. He spent 3 decades traveling the globe as a correspondent for ABC News, 2020, Good Morning America, National Geographic, and others. 3 of those years were spent hitchhiking 20,000 miles across the backroads of America, telling the stories of people he met along the way. Welcome, Jay.
I'm glad to be here. With a life like that, you'd think I'd have it all together, but I don't.
You've done a lot. You certainly have.
Yeah.
You have. You write and you speak about navigating life's transitions. And these are lessons you've learned on the road, but also from your own life experience. So, with that, what has been the biggest change to your life during the pandemic? Just what's been the biggest change for you?
Oh, a couple of things come to mind. I mean, first of all, in many respects, the pandemic has not affected me soulfully in any way because I'm very much an introvert generally. It's interestingly enough because I've had this incredibly public life, but the other part of me has been a very private person. So not social interacting, doing the social distancing, having sort of less contact with the outside world, that hasn't bothered me in the least. In fact, in some respects, I kind of flourish in it. So as an inherent introvert, that part of the pandemic has not affected me. I think that I certainly have thought a great deal during this time about how change is inevitable. The pandemic is one more major hurdle that we will manage through. It's a painful process, but like all failures or detours or mistakes, they also can be portals. And I do believe that the pandemic is going to open up other opportunities in our lives that we're not aware of yet. Even remote learning has been so profound in this. We're just beginning to touch on how it's going to change the way we work. People are not working in corporate settings anymore. I just read the other day about downtown New York, for goodness sake, is an empty cavern in some places. These big corporate offices are empty and people are out back at home. So what is going to be the outcome of all this? I don't know. But change is the hallmark of everything in the universe, from the face that we see in the mirror in the morning to the stars at night. And what's so interesting is that despite it being inherent to everything from the cosmetic to the cosmic, it's still so bloody hard to come to grips with, isn't it, change? And I think part of the reason, maybe a main part of the reason, is because we tend to focus on what might be lost. We tend to focus on what we can lose as opposed to what we might yet find. So I do think that the pandemic holds out the possibility of finding good things out there.
That's great. What a fresh perspective on that. So what are the things one thing that you have found during this time that you want to hold on to? Something that maybe has it been a new habit or just the way that you're living that you really want to hold on to from this change in our lives?
Well, a couple things. First of all, I'd say that my obsession with news has begun to lessen. I have realized how powerful that perspective has become in my life, at least. I've always been interested in journalism and stories, but it has overwhelmed in the course of the last 6 months in so many ways. And I think a lot of people feel that too. So I've kind of dialed back a little bit on the obsession with news generally. The other thing is I have spent so much of this time working on my own keynote addresses and a talk that I give on navigating life's transitions. And I have found it to be really helpful both to me and the people who hear about it, because the transitions that we've gone through are those that we all process. I mean, for young and old, men and women. And They come in all shapes and forms, of course. But there are, if you look closely, there are sort of guides and spirits along the way who can help us navigate these times. But it does not come easy. I tell the story of, at the beginning of some of these talks, about an old farmer in New England about to head into a covered bridge. And he looks into that bridge, and the very last moment, his horse and load of hay behind him, he stops and turns around and leaves. And someone says, well, why did you turn around at the very last moment? He said, well, I looked in that bridge, and I figured we could get in okay, but would never make it out that small hole at the other end. Perspective. Without at least a little bit of perspective, bridges can be damn near impassable. And the same is true of life bridges, transitions. Some people pass through these transitions, and I'm talking about all kinds of transitions: a career change, beginning of a romance, the end of a marriage, birth of a child, the loss of a loved one, COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID, all of these things. But all of them, some people handle them with a great degree of gracefulness and almost elegance. I'm in that other category. I've always been someone, when major transitions have taken place, I think I've stumbled. I keep stumbling. And so there's a high degree of anxiety surrounding them. There's a low self-esteem as a problem, even a dollop of dread, I often say. But both approaches, the nimble navigator, I say, and the fretful voyager, both approaches have value and lessons, but you got to keep looking at them. Transitions are phenomenally interesting. And if you're standing on the planet today, you truly come from a ancient line of survivors. They've survived many pandemics before. They've survived floods and wildflowers. Your ancestors going back beyond the caves. You're in that line. You're in that lineage. So take some comfort, at least, I think, in realizing that there's a tremendous amount of internal biological strength in you.
Very good. That's great perspective. Changing your perspective and just being able to see it in a different way. I love the story about the farmer going through the bridge, and really appreciate those words of strength that you give to help us navigate these changes that we're going through right now.
Yeah, perspective is so invaluable, a wider perspective. I've always felt that I had a wonderful conversation a long time ago now with the legendary astronomer Carl Sagan. And he was so great because you could be talking specifically about something that we're doing for the news program, but he would shift off into personal things very quickly. And he was always talking about, here we are on a third planet away from an average star, certainly in a galaxy of 100 billion stars, in a universe with 100 billion galaxies. And it's a little difficult to get too hung up on that little gray hair or your concern about your child's first grade teacher, whatever it is, if you have that wider perspective, that wider view. But we get buried in the minutiae of our lives. We keep taking the microscopic view of life as opposed to the telescopic one. It's just a good thing to remember, I think.
Looking forward, looking above to that big picture.
That's right.
And seeing our life from there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jay. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Like Jay, it shows us those life transitions can really force us to look ahead to the possibilities and to really see all that's out there for us yet to do, not what we've lost, but what we have yet to gain. And that's how we're living better now.